lucky to have the Smykes, Anita and Dana, to share with us their wonderful Christmas adventure where they went to New Zealand and went all over the place and saw many wonderful things and had many fun adventures. So I believe Anita's going to be running the slideshow and Dana will be throwing some comments here and there, right? All right, so welcome to Dana and Anita.
Okay, thanks for coming, everybody. And you probably wonder why we went to New Zealand in the winter. It's hard to get Dana out of here. But Casey, well, this is like in New Zealand in winter, of course, it's summer there, so lots of veggies. That's Jesse's contribution for our Christmas dinner there. And what precipitated the whole trip was my daughter Casey called up and said, we are going to go mountain biking, downhill mountain biking in New Zealand, she and Jeff, and you guys should meet us for Christmas. And before she even got her tickets, I had tickets for the whole family, and we were going for 5 weeks. Today she told me, Mom, you know, we were going on this romantic biking trip together, and we hadn't even got tickets yet, and you got tickets. So that's what precipitated us going to New Zealand. And only in New Zealand do you see the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer pop up, you know, blow up toys in the water. So we got our free tickets because we got mileage tickets all the way to New Zealand from Cordoba. But we had a 15-hour flight to Australia first, where we met up with, this is Hannah Grimwood, and she grew up here with my girls. And she works at this climbing wall, she runs it, and so she picked us up. We had 12 hours. And Dana will tell you about this. This was near the Sydney Opera House. It's really crowded down there. And we came across this Mad Dogs and Englishmen Seagull Patrol.
Well, I just love quirky stuff when we're traveling. And so you see something like that, and you wonder, what the heck is this about? Well, along the waterfront in Sydney there, they have a real gull problem at all the restaurants. So some entrepreneurial folks got together these border collies, and they patrol the waterfront and chase gulls away. And we saw them in action, and it was hilarious.
How much do they charge an hour?
I don't know, but I'll bet they make good money. You know, there's a handler and their dog, and they're sitting there at the waterfront restaurants, kind of going back and forth chasing gulls. I thought it was hilarious.
So that was our first birding experience. We had 12 hours there, then we finally, after 3 days, we got to New Zealand. And Dana's going to show you the map we put up. You want to use that's the little
laser. So just to orient you, Anita had been here like 40 years ago when she was in college. I had never been here, had no idea the lay of the land. She organized the whole trip. So it was helpful for me to see sort of what makes up the two islands, basically Christchurch here, the big city. Up here, it's Auckland, up there. So we landed in Christchurch and moved around the South Island, went down here to Stewart Island, did a hike, came back up, sort of went up the west coast over to Nelson, and then flew to the North Island, spent a little time on the North Island, and then finished our trip way up here where the Grimwoods are from, where Chris Grimwood is from, and spent time with them. So that's sort of how we planned our trip. The two islands are pretty different, and maybe you'll see it in the slides, but it's fairly tropical up north and sort of more temperate on the South Island.
No. So New Zealand has 5 million people and 25 million sheep. So you see sheep everywhere. This is kind of a lot of the countryside looks like this. And it's also the land of Gandalf and Lord of the Rings sites and the largest eagles there ever were in the world. Dana's going to tell you about this eagle.
The Haast eagle. So I'll say two different things. We had a lot of Lord of the Rings fans on our trip, the kids. So we went to a lot of the different sites where they filmed the movies. But this is totally different. The Haast eagle, the Maori people arrived in New Zealand, they think between 1200 and 1280. And at the time, there were the moas, those giant flightless birds. There were 12 species. They went from turkey size up to as tall as a ceiling here. And apparently within 150 years of arriving in New Zealand, the Maori had wiped out all of the moas. But this Haast eagle was the apex predator in New Zealand and fed on all the various moas, the big ones, the little ones, and everything. So after they were killed off, it didn't take that much longer for the Haast eagle to go by the wayside. But we went to this place, Castle Rock here, and there was some it's kind of interpretive panels about some of the indigenous, Maori that were there. And they talked about these eagles that had a 3-meter wingspan, I think it was, that actually took out people apparently on occasion. And the
little
Maori,
children too. It said
yeah,
they
and the Maoris
prey on
figured out how to weave these grass nets, and they'd set them out and catch the birds, tangle them up, and then kill them. So anyway, the moas are gone, and these haskell eagles are gone now. So before the first Europeans arrived, both those species were gone, or all those species were gone.
Do they have any like fossilized remains of them?
Yeah, I saw really neat. I was looking at the moa thing, and it showed an old, probably a British guy standing there with this reconstructed moa skeleton that was like 9 feet tall. These things were huge. They weighed 200 kilos. Yeah.
So anyhow, we flew into, go ahead.
Your previous slide, any ideas to the geological structure to it with those rocks?
Yeah, so we hiked in amongst all that. It was pretty neat.
But what formed them?
What?
No idea.
I don't know.
Any ideas to their composition? Are they sedimentary or amorphic?
They're hard rocks, so they must have remained after everything eroded away, but I didn't really catch what the geology was there. I don't know.
So we landed in Christchurch, and the botanical gardens are just fabulous if you ever go to Christchurch. And Dana impressed me by knowing every tree, genus, and species in the park from his dendrology course back in the 70s.
The North American ones. They
The North
planted
American.
tons of North American trees there.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. So we started there and saw a lot of birds in the park.
So we'll intermix some bird pictures throughout this thing. We're not really photographers or anything, so a lot of these we grabbed off the internet, but this common chaffinch was everywhere, and these black swans also, is kind of an Australian thing, New Zealand thing, and we saw a ton of them in saltwater, which was really interesting,
Yeah.
the black swans. But there's tons of introduced stuff there, and fewer endemic bird species.
And the Australasian swamp hen was everywhere. So what we did was we brought our tents and camping gear and we rented a car. And Casey and Jeff bought this van and then sold it at the end of the trip. And the van had the tent on it and it was all, had all the supplies in it to cook and everything. So we also got a camp pass for the Department of Conservation campgrounds, which are everywhere. It was $58 per person for 30 days of camping. So it was just amazing.
What were the campgrounds appointed with? Like,
I was gonna show that.
oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so the campgrounds had bathrooms. A few of them had showers. And then they all had these facilities to eat in. Some were enclosed, had actual kitchens and had supplies and stuff. So it's pretty nice. Yeah, really nice way to go.
Were they crowded or pretty sparsely
We were there
populated?
over Christmas time, so some of them were very crowded, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But this is some Europeans there. This is another way of camping was getting these vans. And a lot of them were self-contained, and it was called freedom camping. And you could actually follow an app and camp everywhere for free if you were self-contained. And Dana just had to have a picture because the Crocs match his coffee cup.
That was the giveaway to the Europeans.
And then, will this one go?
Hit the next, yeah.
No. How do I make the?
What was that?
See if you click on
So
it.
this is, camping wasn't always.
Oh, let's go to there.
It was, yeah, we had several days where Dana said it was the most heavy rain he's ever camped in. And that's Ria's tent, and it just kind of came down all night long.
Most of the time it's pretty good.
Yeah, most of the time it was pretty good, but it is wet on the South Island. So Dana will tell you about Foursquare.
Foursquare is sort of the equivalent of 7-Eleven, and they're all over the country, and I love them because they're all very unique. You go into them, and like the one in Arrowtown had fresh bread, vegetables, all kinds of stuff. depending on which one you went into, they had all kinds of different stuff. So it was super interesting. And then I love going through stores in foreign countries and looking at what they got. This is dog food. It's these huge kind of sausage things of dog food. I just thought my dog would kill for something like that. And there's aisles and aisles of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Dana, did you just call New Zealand a poor country?
No,
No?
did I say that? No, I don't think I said
thought you
that.
said I love looking at.
Foreign.
Foreign country. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we mainly bought food at the stores and camped and cooked at our campsite. So out of Christchurch, we were waiting for the kids to get there, and we went up to Arthur's Pass and just found out that the flowers were in full bloom. This is December, mid-December. It was spectacular. And that's a New Zealand fantail, one of the birds that we saw everywhere. It's really beautiful. Dana's gonna tell you, or this is.
Okay, this is the history of skiing. The road down there is where you park. The ski area. Up here. How in the did they get there?
Yeah.
This was mysterious because in Arthur's Pass, we ran across several ski areas. And
We
the
started.
ski areas weren't anywhere near where the road was. And we hiked up 1,600 feet from that road to get to the base area where there was these 3 funky little rope tows. And I'm like, how in the heck does this work? And there was what do they call that? A little tram that you could send your gear up on. But people apparently either helicoptered up or hiked up.
You skid in.
Well, I don't think there's snow down low. I mean, why wouldn't they ski down low if there's, I don't know. The whole thing was bizarre. We ran across several ski areas that were like this, that were nowhere near where your car was.
Well,
The
I
ski
couldn't
area was
believe it when we
miles
got
away.
up there and there was the
Yeah, there's a lodge.
lodge and everything.
Ski areas, but literally 1,600 feet above. It'd be like climbing up past the antennas to get to the ski hill here.
Yeah.
Later, we went to some conventional ski areas where you drove up to a parking lot and took a lift, but several of them we were into were like this. And somebody finally told us, oh yeah, you walk into those. Okay. People are pretty tough.
So this was in Arthur's Pass too, loads of waterfalls on the South Island. And Casey and Jeff, we met up with them up there. And we also went back to Christchurch, picked up Rhea and Jesse and met up with the Grimwoods, which is Chris's wife Jenny, who's from here. Most of you probably know her, and Hannah and Phoebe, who grew up with my girls. And we picked them up, and first off, who wanted to tell you about the fish there that are.
There's, of course, everything's introduced there, so I can't remember the name of this river, it escapes me, but it's south of Christchurch. And they planted kings here in like 1905 or something like that from California. They grabbed some kings, brought them down, kept them alive, planted them in this river, and they currently have a Chinook run there that still to this day carries on. So in this town, they have this giant sculpture of a fish.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so we headed towards our first Lord of the Rings site. This is Rohan, for any of you Lord of the Rings fans, and we could climb right up there where the village of Rohan was. It
Was on
was
top of that
pretty,
hill behind you?
pretty
It's actually
spectacular.
right there.
What we're on is where the whole village was.
The way they melded the actual scenery with, the CGI stuff just blows me away. I haven't seen the movies. I'm not a total fan, but I've seen the movies. And, you look at these landscapes and the movie makes it look like there's this huge town there and everything. It's just, it's amazing.
Yeah. So these next little movies that Jessie took, she put them to music. I couldn't figure out how to put it to music, but so they're being Lord of the Ring figures. That's Gollum, Rhea's Gollum, and so the first one is just a whoops. You got it. Just on top of Rohan and doing like a 360 around. It's this beautiful, beautiful country.
Is that a river?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out those river valleys are really important habitat. There's a ton of those on the South Island, these huge braided gravel rivers, and they're real important bird habitat.
So this Now Jenny's trying to bring a ring. Of course, Jesse had this all the Lord of the Rings music, but. So everywhere we go, we're always birding. And so we headed to the Royal Albatross Center. It's out of Dunedin and on the Otega Peninsula. It's incredible. And the albatross, while we were there, were sitting on the nests. So we went out to this viewing area, and I'm not sure if this next movie is going to work, but so good. We got lucky. It flew right by us, so that was pretty spectacular. And at the Royal Albatross Center, try to go.
Click it again.
There was lots of little chicks, because it was that time of year when all the babies were being born.
These are gulls.
These are gulls.
These are not albatross.
And then we also got to see the little blue penguins. So their babies, they were going out to the ocean and getting food and then bringing them back. Every night, hundreds of these penguins would come in, and we got to go watch them coming in, and I have that video.
These are all adults. The chicks are in burrows right under this platform that we're on, kind of all around the platform.
You can see them swimming in.
So every evening during this time of year, the adults would come in to feed the chicks. These things are tiny. Wait till you see the birds in the background. That's a gull. They're about the size of that gull. And now watch, there's an oyster catcher up here in the frame.
See the oyster catcher?
These things are not much different in size than that oyster catcher.
Is that a black oyster catcher like we have?
It's similar in size. There's variable and I can't remember the other one, South Island oyster catcher. But they're about the same size as ours.
So, yeah, we just stayed there for like an hour, hour and a half, and watched group after group come surfing in. It was really fun. You want to talk about the babies?
Oh, the chicks are in burrows, and these guys, they're making all kinds of noise as the adults come back. Who knows how they find the right burrow, but they do, because there's hundreds of them. And the chicks all come out and are kind of waiting to be fed.
And they're all yelling for their, making their calls for their parents. And they're underneath the platform we're on. It's pretty neat. And this is a couple other birds we saw on the Otega Peninsula. And then we headed south from there. This is called Tunnel Rock. And this is along the east side. And we went down to this Curio Beach on the very south of the southern island and camped, and we got to see the yellow-eyed penguins there. And then we took the ferry across to Stewart Island. And we had planned a backpacking trip. You have to pay in advance for it. And it's called the Raikura Track. And so it was like, I think we did 40 kilometers from the ferry back to the ferry. And I thought, oh, it's along the beach and coast, and no, there's tons of climbing up and down and up and down, so it was a little bit tiring. There's the beginning of it.
How many days?
It's 3 days and 2 nights. And so this is the trail, was in really good shape at the beginning. The middle part of it was very muddy. And you go down to beaches and then up over hills and then back down to beaches. This beautiful scenery. And this is where we were looking for the Kiwi. So we went along the beaches, and at one point I said, I see some sea lions up. There was one sea lion, and I swear I saw 2 sea lions. I think it went up in the forest, and no one agreed with me. But later, we go to our first campground and set up camp. And then that night, we had some sea lions around. And then in the morning, Dana's gonna tell you his story in the morning.
Well, there's signs on the beach that said caution sea lions, so you figure, okay, sea lions hang out on the beach, so be careful, we're up on the grass there. And so I was going over to the little cook area in the morning and I hear this thrashing in the woods on the opposite side of the beach. I thought, okay, it's gotta be pigs or something. I don't know what this could be. I got my camera ready and out of the woods, the beach is behind me, and out of the woods pops a male and a female sea lion. I was like, whoa, that's weird. And then another male shows up, and it turns out the females, I think, are trying to avoid the males and are going inland up into the woods. And these guys came running through the campground where all the tents were. Rhea was still in her tent. We're telling her, stay put, because these guys are running. And they get hauled. You can see a couple of our group are up on the bench inside the.
Yeah, inside we're standing up there. They're very aggressive. And Rhea's like, that one sat right next to her tent and roared. And she's like inside just shaking. We're gonna stay still. Dana has my walking stick, he's ready to protect his daughter. But
Yeah.
Need bear spray.
Yeah.
yeah, look at them. They just come right through
But the
there.
poor female, she finally made it down to the beach into the water and took off porpoising through the water with the two males just chasing her. And I can see why they go up into the woods to try and avoid the aggressive males.
And none of the signs said that, so like. Oh my God. So here's the southern brown kiwi that we were trying to find.
So
the whole time.
this is an internet picture. Stewart Island is the one place where they say you could potentially see them during the day because they live in burrows during the day and come out at night. And so people said if you're hiking along and you're fairly quiet, you hear this rustling because they're going through the leaves and stuff trying to find bugs, and you stop, then you'll see one. And sure enough, we ran into one, but that thing just.
You would not believe how fast.
It's pretty big, it's a big critter like that. But man, as soon as it saw us, it just booked. And so we didn't get that good a look at it. But yeah, they are. They're really, really bizarre. But the neat thing is at night, they have a really interesting call. And it was close to solstice, so it was light till about 11 at night here. And we were hiking all day. I didn't want to get up at night and go looking around for them, but I listened to the call on my app to hear what it sounded like. And sure enough, all through the night, you could hear these guys calling. They have a real distinct call. But we never did go out at night to try and find them.
So we made it. Everyone was happy. It was fun being back with the Grimwoods. And Jenny, this was something she'd always wanted to do, so she was thrilled to make it. There we are at the end. And then we took the ferry back to the Fjordlands. And this is on the west side, which is very popular. The Milford Sound Track is one of the most popular trails in New Zealand. And this was my favorite campground, because you can see the lupin was fabulous. So I put in a bunch of pictures, but there was yellow lupin, pink, white, purple, just every color of lupin. And as far as you can see, Dana said, you don't have to put so many in there, but this is my favorite part.
I got the call of the kiwi if y'all want to hear it.
Okay, the call of the kiwi?
Yeah. I do it? Yeah. Wait, we gotta hear their ad first. Hey, guys. Okay, go away, ad. Right, here it is. Male and female kiwi call. Do it. Almost sounds like a hawk. Or an eagle.
It made me think of an elk, because the ones I heard, they started off with this whistle, this loud, that for some reason made me think of an elk bugle, but yeah, very distinct.
So at the same campground, Dana had one
That
of
was a male, it said.
his funnest experiences with the weka.
With the weka. So the weka is another flightless bird that's there that sort of, this Maori woman told us they sort of filled the niche of a raptor, because she saw one wrestling a rabbit one time. So apparently they're fairly aggressive. But anyway, there was two of them running around with a bunch of chicks. And so I did the playback. I played the call, and my God, that thing went crazy. I thought it was pretty funny. Anita made me stop, but they were just.
I thought he was gonna give it a nervous breakdown, and then he did it again, and the thing just went crazy again.
Oh, it was pretty wild. But then there's South Island Robin was hanging out at that campground. Really neat bird, super curious. Anytime we ran into these on the trail or in a campground, they'd come over and check you out to the point of jumping in the car. We had an open door in the car, and the thing jumped in on the floorboards, looked around, jumped back out. When we ran into them on the trails, you'd stop, and they'd just hop right up to you, kind of give you the once over, and then hop off. They were really neat birds.
Super sweet birds. So now we're headed into the Fjordlands National Park, 275 inches of rain per year. So we did get to see some blue sky, which was amazing, but it was mostly like this. But waterfalls coming down every cliff. Beautiful waterfalls. So we took a lot of hikes up to different waterfalls. And then this hike we took up to the Alpine. It's kind of a pretty steep trail. And got up to this Marion Lake, and it was all fogged in when we got there, and the clouds lifted. Spectacular spot. And this was our first experience with the Kia, and that's the parrot. And you had a story on that you wanted to tell.
Well, they're big parrots. They're really in decline because I think they interact too much with humans. Like everywhere you go, they tell you to protect your trash and your food and everything because they're super curious and they get into your stuff. And I think that's maybe been part of their demise. But they have this banding program where they ask you if you see ones that are banded to try and get a photograph and call this number, and they're tracking where they are. There's not that many of them left, but you'd see them flying around. And unfortunately, at places where there's a lot of people, that's where you see them. This guy we saw here on the bottom, there was two of them, and they had a big round stone in the parking lot, and they were passing this thing around, like flicking it. The other one would grab it and flick it and just walk it across the parking lot doing it. Not sure
like
what
they
was
were
up with
playing.
that.
Kia game.
I think they're playing, yeah.
They're highly intelligent.
Yeah.
And then we got down to the Milford Sound here, and this is the Tui, and has a really beautiful call. We saw these a lot. We were backpacking and hiking. And in Milford Sound, we decided to take a boat ride out into the Sound, and on a very cloudy day. This is our daughter Casey and Jeff. And you can see it's just steep, just straight down the cliffs. And lots of water. And one fun thing, the boat on the left here, we went right up to the falls and went under it. You could stand outside in the falls and get all wet. And when we got back to the cars, the Paradise Shell Duck, these are, you can tell the ducks.
Yeah, another one that you saw all over the place. That's unfortunately same thing. It congregates where there's people. Not all of them, but it was weird seeing it in a parking lot like this and looking for handouts or whatever. But they were pretty ubiquitous. You saw them all over the South Island.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I should get up on the car, be the mama and the three girls, the three chicks that they're girl mom. So then we went to an Airbnb for the 5 days around Christmas, and this is Arrowtown, Queenstown. If you've heard of Queenstown, it's just above Queenstown. This is like probably the most popular area, don't you think, of all of New Zealand?
Yeah.
Yeah, the people come here to do everything. It's really very pretty. And this is where we spent Christmas. And so Dana, I'm gonna have him tell you, every morning he would have a plan for us to go see like Lord of the Rings sites or go hiking.
Well, no, my main thing was the hike, but it turns out we had this book that talked about all the film locations from Lord of the Rings, and we'd pick these random hikes and then check it in this book, and sure enough, that's where they filmed the Fords of Bruinen, on this hike that we were gonna do.
Yeah.
So anyway, it satisfied two groups, the ones that wanted to hike and the ones that wanted to see the Lord of the Rings.
Are any of you guys Lord of the Rings fans?
No.
Anyhow, that's Arrowtown down there, so you kind of see what the area is like. And another Lord of the Rings, the Pillars of the King's film location.
It's another one. I thought, oh, this is neat hike along this river. Let's do that. We checked in the book, and sure enough, yeah, that's where the Pillars of the Kings were.
We can talk about that.
And then a legit ski area. So we drove way up this super cool road, way up, and this is called the Remarkables. That's the mountain range right outside of Queenstown. And we're gonna hike up to this Lake Alta, which luck would have it, was a Lord of the Rings film site. Satisfied two groups.
But there's snowmaking equipment everywhere. Those,
I'm sure their winters must be fairly marginal there, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And there's
Yeah.
several big ski areas near there.
So this is Lake Alta at the top there where we hiked to. And Jeff's parents met us for Christmas. They only came for Christmas, not for 5 weeks. Anyhow, that was all of us that spent the 5 days there for Christmas.
Moki Lake, another hike near there, just a beautiful setting. You drive up this road up out of the valley and it's a beautiful trail all the way around this lake. Spectacular scenery.
Did you go swimming in any of those lakes?
Can you what?
Did you go swimming?
I didn't swim in that one, but I did swim on the trip. It's one of the only ones that swim. But foxglove is everywhere. It's so beautiful, but it's an invasive species. It's taken over. And that's the hike around the lake. So while we were doing all this hiking, you see that Casey's not in a lot of these pictures. Casey and Jeff, this is what they're doing. This is Casey on the right and Jeff on the left. They do some pretty extreme mountain biking. And a lot of these areas you can take a chairlift up to and then they ride down. So they talked the whole family into going to a ski area and biking all day. And the whole family talked me out of trying it. I'm not that coordinated. Dana caught on. Jesse and Rhea did not like it very much. So anyhow, I hiked up the ski hill and then there was this Cordona mountain behind it. So I just kept going and met somebody hiking up this mountain. And this is looking down at Queenstown, down here. And looking the other way at Lake Wanaka, this beautiful country. Dana will tell you about this because he knows the horsepower of the engines and everything. We thought we'd do one extreme thing. It was jet boating.
Just jet boating on the Shotover River, these little jet boats. You know, the Kiwis are the kings of jet boating. They invented it basically. And it's just amazing, you know, this multi-hundred horsepower little jet boat. They take you in it up and down this river. And it brings jet boating to a whole new level after you've done that.
Well, you do 360s continuously. And you go within a foot of these cliffs on either side, you know, you're just like right next to it. These guys, I asked him how much training, he had like hundreds of hours before they could take out people to do this, but it was very fun. It was really fun. And so then after that, we left that area and started camping again and we went to Mount Cook. And it's funny, when Dana and I came back to Alaska, we've got thousands of Mount Cooks here, but everyone from all over the world goes to Mount Cook here, National Park, and as you can see, it's a lot of tents camping. And so there's lots of hikes in this area, and we took this hike out of there up to a lake. And this is just on the way. There's 3 suspension bridges that we had to cross to get there. But just beautiful country. Ben Americus, how many know Ben Americus in here? Yeah, he spent a lot of time here. Just right before we got here, he was here. He said he had to hike 10 hours before he got to the area where he was skiing.
So are those glaciers receding?
We love that. Probably.
I think so, yeah. Everything there, when you think of it on a scale compared to what we know here, is tiny.
Yeah.
You know, and people are like, oh my God, the huge mountain, the huge glaciers and everything, but it is like you could plop several of these national parks in around that Sheridan Lake area out there. It's,
Well, the whole country's the size of Colorado.
yeah, things are on a much smaller scale.
Talk about the Red Tarn.
Red Tarn, just another hike in the area.
So in the morning, we did that one hike, and we did this in the afternoon, and it was from down to the valley, it was all stairs going up for 1,200 feet, I think. But it was super neat up there. No people. The other trail had hundreds of tourists and stuff on the trail. But that's what it was. They built stairs all the way up from the valley down there.
You know what was super interesting in this national park? We were on this trail earlier that there was tons of people along going to this lake and back. It was like a 3-mile trail. And I saw one guy dressed in camo with a huge pack with a big rifle sticking off in amongst everybody. And I think you're allowed to hunt because there's a lot of invasive goats and tahr and all kinds of introduced exotics. And I think you're allowed to hunt those in the national parks and everything. Yeah, so it was really bizarre seeing all these tourists and then one guy with a rifle and a pack heading out to hunt.
So New Zealand doesn't have any large predators left then?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. No more eagles. Can't imagine that. So we kind of split up with Casey now, and she went on to see more of the South Island. And this is called Rainbow Road, and she said that was her favorite area, camping. It's kind of in the northern part of the island. Really pretty. And we went over to the West Coast and drove up the West Coast. This is Pancake Rocks on the West Coast. There's a big blowhole there. And then we stopped along the beach. David's going to tell you about the
Double-banded dotterel, which is just a shorebird there. That was pretty neat because we didn't spend a lot of time on the ocean, so we didn't have that much opportunity to see seabirds. But that thing in the middle, what is that, a blue bottle?
The blue bottom jelly.
Yeah,
Oh, it's not a man of war?
yeah, but it's a little tiny thing. Yeah, Rhea found that in the rocks. I had never heard of that before. Blue
Yeah,
bottle, but yeah.
they're pretty. Almost looked like a nudibranch if you just saw the top part of it.
Oh, the bird, silver eye, and a very oyster catcher.
Yeah.
The oyster catchers were pretty numerous on the beaches. Anytime you were on a beach, it seemed like you'd see those.
And then we flew to the North Island, and it was Jesse's last day. It was New Year's Day, so we went to Hobbiton. And we found out by our size that we could have been cast in the, in Hobbits. We were short enough. I think, was it 5'3" and under or 5'4" and under?
Not me, I was too tall.
Not you, but the rest of us could have been in the movies if we were there. I just love this place. There's still, like, this whole area is where it was filmed, and there's still like 44 little hobbit holes. And you can't go, you've never been able to go inside them. So, well, this was really unusual. Some tourists that went along on the hike dressed totally as Gandalf. So, and the vegetables were growing, the flowers, they had the little tiny clothes hanging up on the laundry lines. So neat. Party business. Anyhow, each Hobbit house has like a specialty that they do. Like this one's the bread maker, and there's the honey maker, and so they have the stuff out in front of it. And in December, they finished building a Hobbit house because the one that they used was for the movies was somewhere else. For Frodo and Bilbo's house, well, they built a house, and now you can go in it, and I could just live there.
Oh, yeah.
This is the living room. I mean, it's all miniaturized, and and they even had a real fire going on there. And remember in Lord of the Rings when they came into the pantry and they took all the food? There's the pantry. And the pie making and his little desk and the little kids' rooms. And they even had a Hobbit dollhouse. So anyhow, okay, enough of Hobbiton, but that was one of our favorite places. So Rhea went on to go with Phoebe Grimwood and do the Tongariro Alpine Crossing, which is a huge trek. It's like 19 kilometers. And it takes all day. You have to plan it out, have a pickup on the other side. But she said it was her favorite trail of all of New Zealand. So they did that together. And look at the colors, volcanic colors, the lakes on it. So they had a great time. She spent a few days with Phoebe. This is where they camped. Oh, it's a Mountain Dew pond. This is Casey and Jeff on the North Island. They went, this is south of Rotorua, kind of south of Auckland, and it's a thermal park. But isn't that colors? So Rhea and Dana and I got picked up in Auckland by Jenny and Chris, or Jenny, and we drove up to Chris's house. Chris is going to help me with some of this. But they live in the Northland, and you're third or fourth generation?
Yeah,
Kiwi?
I am like that. Yeah, I'd be like, I'd be third generation.
Yeah, so this is on his ranch that he was raised on, and his mom lives down the hill, and his sister and aunts, and yeah, so the family's all around, and it's really off the grid. He has one solar panel that runs it, and they have a trailer here where you cook in, and then they just built the building here. This is the outhouse, so there's an outhouse. They built just for us. They were using buckets before we got there. And they built this little part of the house where they could eat in, and there's a bedroom there, so super nice place, really relaxing and peaceful. There was peacocks everywhere, and what other birds did we see there? We'd hear the peacocks screaming. And so every day, Jenny would have something planned and tell Chris what we were doing. And we'd go off and see all the parts of the Northland and learn a lot about the culture and just saw some beautiful places that probably tourists don't get to. Yeah. Those are sand dunes across the way, spectacular beaches. And so, yeah, Jenny would take us to a different beach every day. And we'd take hikes. This was a hike that we did out to the point. And of course, she took us to Foursquare because Dana had to have Foursquare. Like, oh yeah, Foursquare and good scenery. And then we went to see the giants of Southwest Pacific, the kauri trees. And they were back when dinosaurs roamed the earth 150 million years ago. They're incredible trees. You can see the size of them. Tell us about that, how many are left of the...
There's not a huge amount. I remember when there was a very extensive milling when early in the 1700s when first Europeans came and the missionaries, and they used the wood for ships' masts because they were so straight and stuff. So there was a colossal amount that were milled. And they even build smaller railways into the forestry to pull out the logs and stuff, and bullet things and everything else. And they would actually cut them with a big crosscut saw. There's a hole underneath, and a log would be laying over the top, one man on top, one underneath, and they'd be cutting the logs in half and stuff.
And Chris's family came there to, we call it mining gum?
They came as gum diggers, and this type of tree, the gum out of it, when it goes hard, is like gold. It's like really golden, and it's very clear. And it used to be in some of the swamps and stuff like that. They would be buried, and so a lot of these people would come and they dig up the swamps to collect this gum, and it was a way they made a living in the early days. And then the market dropped out of it, and then everybody went buying into dairy cattle and farming also.
What was that gum used for like caulking?
No, it was used a lot for like paints and resins and glue and stuff like that. Yeah.
So, Dana, you want to
Kite
explain it?
fishing. Chris told me about kite fishing, but until I saw it, I couldn't believe it. So you need an offshore wind, a kite that's about 2 meters wide, and there's a kilometer of 120-pound monofilament on that spool.
Yeah.
So basically, you're using the kite to set a long line beyond the breakers there. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so.
Get the kite in the air, and you let the wind is blowing it offshore, and you're feeding the line out. Once it gets out there a ways, you attach these hooks. There's a bunch of hooks on that little spool.
But that line is attached to, this is a wheels, thing on a wheel, so it keeps the line on the bottom while it's going out, those wheels take it out.
So it drags it all through the breakers and sets it on the other side of the breakers. You leave it there for a few hours, and then you haul it back in. So you walk down the beach, grab the line, haul it up while somebody's putting it back on the spool.
Chris does this all by himself. It was 4 of us doing it. And we got a shark, the first one. And then, so we put it out again, and then we got one, and then he said, oh, we're gonna put it out again. It was so fun, yeah. And this is called 90 Mile Beach. It's actually 90 kilometers, I think.
54 miles.
Yeah. But it's called 90 Mile Beach, and Chris brought us out here. We drove the whole beach. You can drive 70 miles per hour on the beach.
Yeah.
It's just straight forever. But these are what we caught, some rockfish. Red snapper. And clams.
Tua.
Yeah, tua clams. You could get thousands of them if you wanted. And then to get back up to the road, we went up this river. It was incredible. And we brought the fish and the clams back, and Jenny, you know Jenny, she's a great cook. So we had all sorts of meals of the fish and the clams. And so this is a tour Jenny took us on to the 100-flusher toilets. This is a famous artist, and I just had to put this in here because it's super interesting. You have the bottles back there and all the tiles. And the town had all its artwork all around town there. And we also went on a kayaking trip. And down this river. Can't get it to go. And we came out into this bay where the Treaty of Waitangi, that was in 1840 with the Maori chiefs, all signed it with the British, to get the British ruling over the land and stuff. And there was hundreds of chiefs that came to this site in their boats to sign this treaty. So it was pretty interesting. And then we also went to the very north of the Northland, and it's where the spirits head home. And Jenny told me something pretty neat. Nathaniel and Enrique Zamudio were good friends, and so he brought Enrique's ashes there and spread them. I thought that was pretty special to be there. Beautiful site. So that's the very north of the North Island. Do you have any more to say about? What's that?
Where there's 2 oceans, the Pacific and the Tasman meet there, and you can see it. There's big, huge waves, and there's 2 different colors, the oceans stuff there.
Then we went to the Bay of Islands. Dana's going to tell you.
Very touristy, but we went there and did a little boat trip around through these islands. This bay has like 140 islands in it, and what was the significance? There was that mission in there. There's a French mission in there.
What's that?
Yeah.
Montpellier House.
Yeah, Montpellier, the French mission. Because it used to be like in the 1700s, all the sailors would come in there.
Yeah.
It was sort of a I don't know, pretty lawless place, it sounds like, before the missionaries got established there. But anyway, it's pretty touristy. We did a trip through there, not looking for birds or anything in particular, but we did get to see a New Zealand dotterel there, which is super rare, endangered. The guy on the boat said, you might see one, but they didn't think you would. I was the only one that had binocs. It wasn't really a birding trip. But we went up to this one beach looking for oyster catchers, and I scanned the beach and spotted one of these New Zealand dotterel, and the guy was freaking out, the guy running the
He
boat.
was so excited, yeah.
And passed the binocs all around so everybody could see it. But yeah, just a neat little shorebird that's really endangered, I guess.
So anyhow, we spent our last, 12 days up at the Grimwoods, just exploring all the Northland and having these sunsets at night, and it was really peaceful and, yeah, great host. Now everybody's gonna come there, Chris. And that's the end of our slideshow. We left from there and flew home, but it was a spectacular trip. So does anybody have any questions or?
And I have a list of the birds we saw here, if anybody wants to see that. There's a map here too, you can take a look at it if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Hobbiton movie set brochure if you need to look at
So
that.
birds abundant there, or?
Not necessarily, but, you know, like in a heavy forested area, you'd have to poke around to see them. Yeah. In a few places, it seems like there were a lot of birds and you'd get just a real brief glimpse, you know, so you had to sort of sit still and try and watch for a while to see. Because when I first got there, I was overwhelmed. There was so much, you know, different stuff. Yeah. So it was pretty neat. But after a while, it was neat seeking out or finding endemic species because there's tons of introduced stuff there.
Okay.
There's all kinds of European species. I mean, we saw Canada geese and mallards and muscovy ducks and, you know, just tons of stuff that's been introduced. So finding the stuff that was endemic was pretty neat.
So does New Zealand have any kind of plan, or they're just like, they're here?
They want to be predator free in 23, or I forget what the saying is, but the only endemic mammals are 2 species of bats. So all the other mammals that are there have been introduced. And there's quite a few, they've got a really active trapping program, like we would see critter traps all over the place on the hikes.
Like rats and cats.
For rats and stoats, you know, which are little weasels. Yeah, and those possums are everywhere.
What?
These possums, I think they're from Australia.
Right.
They're a nocturnal thing, and we didn't see very many live ones, but you see tons of dead ones on the road that get squashed. So there's a real active trapping program trying to free these areas of all, because they're really detrimental on the birds.
Are feral cats a problem there?
You know, I'm sure they are, but we didn't hear as much about that. Dogs are really, you know, we're dog people, but boy, everywhere you went, there was no dog signs.
Okay.
You know, and I think because they chase and kill kiwis. So there's tons of areas where there were kiwis and they don't want you letting your dogs run around. You know, it seems like so much has been introduced there that I don't know how they're ever going to get, you know, totally free of it. But they are working towards that. It's interesting because when you do fly in, if you have any kind of camping gear or bikes or anything, going through customs, they have a whole nother section where they take your gear. They took our tents, they took any camping gear we had, took it into a little back room, opened it up, inspected it, sprayed it with something, shoved it all, gave it back to you.
They're really careful.
So yeah, they are, real
Jenny
careful.
she had some salad left from her flight, had 2 little cherry tomatoes in it. And she didn't declare that she had salad when she came in. I mean, she didn't think of it. And they took that and they cut open the cherry tomatoes, got rid of the seeds, and fined her $300. Yeah, they're very, very strict. Yeah, Bob.
What is their currency and what is the price of petrol?
You know what? You're on vacation, don't ask.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Chris can tell you more about that. It was.
The currency is New Zealand dollar, and it happened to be very favorable for us when we were there.
The exchange rate was fabulous. So
Yeah,
the
so
trip
it was
wasn't
pretty good.
very expensive.
You know,
for us.
the fuel prices are New Zealand dollars per liter. So there's too much math involved, so we just paid.
But it was very affordable to travel there camping and just renting a car and buying our food, buying our passes for the campgrounds and stuff, so.
So let me understand this. So you said $58 for the entire time for a camp?
Per person, yeah,
For a month at DOC, which is their park service
Yeah.
campground.
That's incredible.
I know. And they were nice facilities. I mean, some of the
Yeah, they
bathrooms,
look
like at
nice.
Mount Cook, you walk outside of the toilet and there's a sink there, you know, and you can
Right.
wash your hands and, yeah, I was impressed. So,
And this whole freedom camping thing is interesting. If you are self-contained, you can get an app that tells you, and these are spots that are, a lot of them are way off kind of the beaten path, where if you have some sort of little travel trailer or there's tons of those little vans, like
Yeah.
couples in the little van,
mhm.
and you could drive down onto these beaches and it would say freedom camping allowed. And that means, there's no facilities, but it's a
Right.
place you can hang out. And then closer to town, you'd see signs that say no freedom camping, because they didn't want you, just parking in the parking lots there and stuff. So, yeah.
I think the
Real
van
easy to
rental
travel.
is expensive though,
Yeah,
to get one of those vans.
I'm tempted to Google it. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It was good.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just my daughter buying the van and selling the van. That turned out to be pretty good.
Yeah.
They spent a couple thousand maybe for their 2 months there on the.
Stressful though, wondering if you're gonna sell it before you leave.
Yeah.
We did that in Australia and we were right down the wire getting it sold before we left.
How many different species of birds do you suppose you encountered?
We saw 64 or 68 or something.
Yeah, there's a
Something
list
there.
of them
I
if
think
you.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was fun because we're kind of casual birders, so that was a
Yeah.
good thing to do. We love to hike, so we did a lot of that. The whole Lord of the Rings thing was a part of it, so,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's funny, those of you that have older kids, traveling vacation or whatever with your kids when they're little is one thing, but as adults, it's a whole different
Mhm.
thing in a lot of different ways. So it was a lot
It
of fun.
was so fun. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you have any more in-depth questions about New Zealand, Chris is there. They got 4 generations of New Zealanders.
The red tree that you saw there a lot of times by the ocean and stuff, they call it the New Zealand Christmas tree. It's a